Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
From the secret lair of the Talk of Santa Clarita studios, Radio Free Santa Clarita presents the Talk of Santa Clarita, a podcast about issues involving Santa Clarita and the surrounding valley. Episode 149, a coronavirus special edition with the Mayor of Santa Clarita, Cameron Smyth. And now, let's see what the Talk of Santa Clarita is.
And remember, this is for posterity, so be honest.
Mayor Smyth, thank you so much for coming today for the Talk of Santa Clarita. I'm welcoming you into the inner sanctum, the inner layer of the Talk of Santa Clarita studios via internet. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Yeah,
considering the circumstances and stuff like that. I guess more specifically, how are you and your family holding up with basically quarantine?
Yeah, it's been interesting because I have all three of my kids are at a different level of education, and so I've got a high school student, junior high, and elementary. And first, we want to give tremendous credit to our teachers who are doing everything they can to learn the online system and to make sure that the kids are still getting the best education they can under these circumstances. And so it's been nice to see again, whether it be the high school or the elementary districts, the teachers really in many cases sacrificing their interactions with their own kids to make sure that our students are getting their education. And with my wife teaching at COC, actually seeing all four levels of education here in the community and how they're trying to make it work.
Logistically, I mean, my wife's a teacher for LAUSD, and she was on a meeting on Zoom actually the other day, and they were talking about the logistics of just trying to put all this together and teaching these kids online, and it just seems just insane how much work is going to be involved in trying to do this. So kudos to the teachers in general.
Yeah, it's a significant transition. Lena has already been an online instructor at COC for a number of years, so that hasn't been much of a challenge, for her. But seeing the other teachers that have never done it transition, it takes some time, no doubt.
Yeah. I'm curious about, well, first off, when they were choosing mayor this year, or in December, if you known there was going to be a crisis like this, would you have stepped up? I mean, usually
it's
the mayor,
of course it's the time.
Yeah. But usually the mayor thing is more ceremonial than anything else. And suddenly you're in a position of where you're, suddenly, it's like if there was an earthquake or something else, a major event had happened in the city or something like that. Do you feel pressure for what you're having to go through right now or what you're dealing with?
It's, obviously I would always prefer a very boring year as, my mayor terms. I always appreciate that. But, fortunately we have such tremendous staff at City Hall that, I have felt very confident that whatever the circumstances are, we've got a great team in place that's able to respond. Santa Clarita's we're no stranger to crises and to activating our emergency services as needed. This is obviously a little different circumstance in that we've had to close down a lot of city operations, have staff working from home, but again, we have that training and expertise. So I felt good about the response we have, and whether I'm mayor or not, the city was going to continue to do well, given the professionalism and the quality of staff we have.
Are you making decisions like individually as the mayor? Are you consulting with the council on every decision that's being made? Or is Ken Striplin as the city manager. You know, I mean, how's the hierarchy working with the government right now as far as the decisions made for the city?
So it is I appreciate the question, because I know Santa Clarita has a different governmental structure than the city of Los Angeles, for example. And so I don't have that executive authority, if you will, to be able to unilaterally make decisions about park closures or bus routes or business closures. Those are anything like that. Major decisions still requires a vote of the council. The city manager has a lot of leeway when it comes to authorizing the day-to-day operations. And so, for example, the decision last week to close the basketball courts, tennis courts, dog parks, that was ultimately made by the city manager, but with consultation of the full council and getting input. But ultimately, the city manager had that authority to make the decision. It's done with the direction of the council. But there are some things that we need to do together. For example, we're going to be meeting on to vote on a rent protection ordinance, and while the city of LA did that unilaterally, the mayor did that unilaterally, the governor has done it statewide under his executive authority. In the city, we need to do that as a council.
Okay. I guess I'm curious as to when did you guys realize that this was going to be a big deal for the city? I mean, that public-wise, it wasn't going to be SARS or H1N1 or whatever it was, and I mean that we were going to be in a situation where the schools were going to be shutting down. What point did that happen at? I'm curious as to when you became aware of how serious the situation was going to get.
So I think the city manager and I started having some initial discussions, right around the first of the month. Mm-hmm. Things hadn't ramped up yet, but I think in some conversations that our staff had been having with public health officials within the county and others, there was a lot of indication that this was going to ramp up, and so we started having some early conversations about that. But certainly things moved very quickly. I think you go back from the time the schools started 2 weeks ago when the schools were closed to where we are now. It certainly feels a lot longer than 2 weeks ago. But we had an idea that this could ramp up, but I don't think anyone expected the speed and the complete, more or less, shutdown of the country in a lot of ways.
Well, why hasn't there been essentially a full lockdown on the city itself, the city of Santa Clarita? I mean, that's correct me if I'm wrong. That's what Los Angeles has done, right? I mean, they've shut down everything, pretty much. I mean, how come we haven't had something like that done here in Santa Clarita?
Well, we still have. The same guy. The city of Los Angeles still has a number of businesses that are open and operating that have been deemed essential. We are under a similar path because the decision to close businesses and all that has been made by the County Department of Public Health. Okay, that's where those decisions are coming from, and so within Los Angeles County. You have 3 cities that have their own health departments. Los Angeles, Long Beach, and Pasadena have their own health departments. The rest are under the guidelines of LA County. Okay. So we take our direction from them, given that it is a health department decision. So again, the council couldn't say today that we're going to open up all of our businesses. The council, we vote Santa Clarita is open for business because the decision to close is done through the public health department, not through an individual city. And so we take our direction from them, and we certainly want to avoid as much of a full kind of quote unquote lockdown that you are seeing in the Bay Area, for example, or others, if we can help it. But certainly that is a possibility if the numbers don't start to slow down and people don't continue to adhere to the guidelines and directives that are in place now.
So you think there might be more closures around the city? I mean, like, for example, why aren't the paseos closed? I mean, it seems like they closed a lot of the hiking paths and everybody went to the paseos. You know what I mean?
Well, paseos are a different, right. And I think, the decision to close, for the county decision to close their trails, it's their trail system is set up differently than Santa Clarita. When you think about, a trail system, your mind immediately goes to a Towsley Canyon, a Whitney Canyon that is, kind of narrow by walking trails in a kind of in the mountainous setting. And the concern about the Department of Public Health was the kind of congregation of people at the trailheads and not being able to maintain that social distancing as people were coming up on the trails, people passing one another going up or going down. But the Santa Clarita trail system is much different. Again, whether you look at the paseos, first, it's almost impossible to close a paseo system.
Yeah.
There are no natural.
This is all new to me, so I'm learning as I go. So I'm just I'm just curious.
There aren't any gates. There aren't any gates to the paseos.
Right.
That's. But also, you look at the city trail system around the Santa Clara River. We have multiple access points. It's not like, again, I point to Towsley or Whitney, where you really do just have kind of one ingress and egress point to the trail. But if you look at the city's trail system, you can access it in multiple different ways. So you don't get that kind of bottleneck that you see in some of the other more traditional trail system. Now that being said, we evaluate every week. Almost every day. And if we have to make additional decisions, we will. Last weekend, it was very disappointing to see the number of people that were completely ignoring all the social distancing ordinances and playing, full on, 5-on-5 pickup basketball like there had been no order directed at all. So that resulted in us on Monday, shutting down the basketball courts, the tennis courts, some of those other areas because they weren't the directions weren't being followed.
It's amazing how many people think they're invulnerable. Like, I have trouble with that word, but you know what I mean.
It is, and as we all know, and certainly I'm not a scientist or a public health official, but you realize that it's not just about your personal health, and you may be a carrier. But be asymptomatic and never feel any symptoms, but you certainly could pass that on to someone else. Again, whether it's someone who's a senior, your parents, or others with conditions, and so that's what you're trying to get people to understand.
I'm curious as to why you talked to. I saw your speech that you gave on the City of Santa Clarita website about just updates on the COVID-19 situation from yesterday. And I was surprised to find out that bus travel is just now being limited. I mean, why is it even open? It seems like just another petri dish for COVID-19 to flourish. You know what I mean? Why are we still running buses?
Well, again, a number of people are still require buses to get to work. You have healthcare workers that need the buses to get to their job. You need people that have other are in essential services and rely on our bus system to be in operation. I believe the county bus system continues to be the city of LA's. So you want to still utilize the public transportation system as you can. Everything is we go through a full cleaning protocol with EPA approved cleaners that are done on a even more regular basis now while we're working through the virus. But again, these are essential services like public transportation need to be accessible. But again, we're always evaluating it. We're only 2 weeks into this, and as things change, we'll make adjustments accordingly.
I think you pointed something out right there. Is just, we're just 2 weeks into it. I think the question that everybody wants to know is, how long is this going to last? I mean, are you getting any kind of indication from the state or from the county as to what they anticipate will be the length of time that we're going to be doing this kind of stuff?
So the county's order for the social distancing and all is in place until April 19th.
Right. But do you think it'll go beyond that? I mean,
we've got 3 weeks to go for sure. And I would like to think that there'll be enough data 3 weeks from now to give us a pretty good indication if the directives have been working. Does that, are they going to be able then to relax some of those restrictions, or are they going to have to be extended, beyond the April 19th deadline? The school system, I believe the LA County, Department of Education has said schools are to come back. I think it's May 3rd. Yeah. And so you have a couple of those timelines in place, but they certainly could be, they could be changed based on the data. And what I keep trying to tell people is the more aggressively we follow the orders that are in place now, the quicker they will be relieved.
Yeah.
And if we don't follow them now, then they're just going to stay in place longer, and they could, quite frankly, become more restrictive.
Do you think? Do you think that the idea of getting back in business at around Easter time, regardless of what the county says, you think that's a good idea because that's being suggested by certain powers that be right now? That
sure. No, I think in Los Angeles County, I don't think that's realistic.
Yeah.
I think there are maybe the other country, and quite frankly, might be other parts of California where you could do that. You look at, I know Governor Brown always used to reference Siskiyou County. Well, Siskiyou County has a much different population and demographic than we do in other parts of the state, and so they may be in a better position to do that. But here in LA County, I don't expect any change in terms of lessening between now and April 19th. If there's going to be any change between now and then, it would be increased enforcements.
What are you doing any coordinating with the county to bring testing into Santa Clarita, like the drive-through testing or anything like that? I mean, I think that's the big. Like my wife, every time she coughs, she panics now. Just knowing is half the battle, as G.I. Joe used to say. And I mean, is the city doing anything about trying to get testing available to the public? Right.
Yeah, and I think that's the challenge countywide, and if not nationwide, is getting access to the testing kits that can be produced at a high level to where you can have general population testing as opposed to those who are showing, limiting it right now to those who are showing symptoms. So I know in Santa Clarita we'd like the rest of the county and the state, we have our request in for those testing kits, and as they become produced at a higher level, we'll be able to get greater testing. But we're kind of stuck like everybody else.
But any idea when that's going to happen?
I haven't had any specific timelines shared with me. No.
Whose fault is that? Is that the state's? Is it the federal government? I mean, it seems like. I mean, is there a finger? Is there a place to point my finger to blame? I guess.
And I don't think there's 10 million people in Los Angeles County.
Yeah.
So, it's hard to produce 10 million of anything.
Yeah.
Within a, a year's notice, let's say, versus, the timeline of actually even, creating the tests, ensuring their accuracy. And that's important. I know I just read that, Abbott Labs, looks like they have a green light for a new testing protocol that can give you, results within 5 to 10 minutes, and they are producing 50,000 of those. But again, that's a very small part of the population.
So far, we have 28 confirmed.
Yes, 27 to 28. I think media sources have different, there's a discrepancy on that one, I think. But so on the high end, yes. So we'll go with, I think what I said was 28.
Do you know any information, like are they more elderly, or is it across the board as far as age-wise or anything like that? Or?
I don't have any of the demographic information other than I know that a high majority of them are have been diagnosed and then quarantined at home. Okay. So I don't think we don't have a high number of those are in hospitalization or requiring extensive care at the moment. Is my understanding.
I think one of the things that's scary is when you look at New York and the situation for the demand for beds and PPE, I think it's called, and et cetera, et cetera. Are we prepared in a situation? I mean, do you know how many beds Henry Mayo has? I mean, I don't anticipate us getting hit as hard as New York, but who knows? You know what I mean? I mean, are we prepared on a certain level for a major influx of this happening here in Santa Clarita, do you think? I mean, have you talked to Henry Mayo about this?
Sure. And I think, Henry Mayo, fortunately, is our main hospital system, has had a number of weeks now to prepare because we haven't had that, that big, influx that you're seeing in other communities. So they've had some time to prepare, but certainly, we don't have 1,000 beds in Santa Clarita, in the hospital setting. So certainly if there is a significant spike of required hospitalizations, that's going to impact, and you're going to have to, find, other ways to set it up, just like, other communities are across the country as well. But I don't want to sound, alarmist or minimize it. But, at this point, like I said, we have 28 confirmed cases with a very small number of those being requiring any kind of hospitalization. Well, so at this point, the numbers aren't showing that currently that there is a huge influx of hospitalization.
Well, I mean, but shouldn't we be getting prepared in case that happens? I mean, are you guys doing any preparation for the possibility of we might need 1,000 beds or 2,000 beds?
Well, again, yeah, certainly. I think again, I defer that to that's got to be deferred to the health officials, and but we certainly Santa Clarita obviously is ready to. We're obviously ready to to help as as needed. For example, we just transitioned the Newhall Community Center to accommodate our homeless population at Bridge to Home, and so we do have city facilities that are currently not being used. That if or if required, do have space that you can set up while still maintaining the social distancing and all of those requirements. We do have city facilities that are that they can be accessible. So, but at this point, we haven't had any requests, haven't had any preps. So, prep requests. So, if the time comes, but I think the city has facilities, but ultimately, those are going to be decisions made by public health officials.
What about, do we have enough PPE available for Henry Mayo, or
again, those are questions for it's not the city hospital.
I'm putting you on the spot. I'm putting you on the spot. I just it seems like these are things that just would be questions that would be asked in general, just to be prepared for it. I mean, this is what Cuomo and De Blasio are complaining about right now. So I'm just curious if any of this has been looked into.
Sure, but again, I think you need to be careful, though, not to try to equate what's happening in New York City with Santa Clarita, because certainly the needs there are much.
No, it's a much more dense area, and obviously a lot more people and everything like that. And I doubt that we will ever get on that level of But on the other end of it, the way it's been spiking in certain areas and stuff like that, it makes me think better safe than sorry.
And of course, like I said, our health officials are, ready. And like I said, we're fortunate that we've had several weeks of relatively small numbers that haven't required that hospitalization. So it's given our teams to enough time to, if the spike comes, it's not going to catch everybody by surprise.
Tell me about this water contractor that tested positive. How did you guys find out about the situation?
I found out about it through just through the media, because again, the water agency is is a different elected board, a different governing body, and they became once they became aware of the contractor testing positive. I believe they notified the residents, kind of found what his workload was, and they notified those residents of the situation.
Have any of them been affected by as a result of this directly?
Again, not that I am not aware, but again, that is personal healthcare information that I wouldn't have access to anyways.
I'm curious. You have a city council meeting coming up on Tuesday. How are you going to do that? Are you guys going to just sit 6 feet apart? I mean, well, it seems actually the dais kind of looks like you guys pretty much sit 6 feet apart anyway. But I mean, how are you going to do that and allow public opinion and things to happen? Sure,
it certainly is a different format, and the governor has allowed for some flexibility for local governments like Santa Clarita, that if we're having to have a emergency meeting like we're doing, to still meet all of the thresholds of it being a public meeting, so that the actions we take are approvable, but still need to be mindful in monitoring the guidelines about open meetings. So what I have said is for people, if they want to comment on the item, certainly can do so through the city's email system. You can email each council member. Our city hall is open, so people can still call and voice their opinions. So we will make sure that all of the council members have that information. And I know we're looking at how some other cities have utilized, whether it be a Zoom app or a call-in, other ways to allow residents, if they want to provide public input in real time, are still able to do that. So it's a unique circumstance. We're kind of looking at other cities and how they're handling it, and try to put that in place for us on Tuesday.
There have been a lot of closures of events as well, particularly the Cowboy Festival. Is there any plans to reschedule it or just put it off for this year?
No, I think some of those big events, like the Cowboy Festival, is probably the biggest city put on event right now that's been canceled. It's just going to be canceled because the time it gets to get vendors and performers, who have already been booked, they still have other events that are on their calendar for later in the year. So it becomes logistically very difficult to rebook all of the acts and entertainment. So we've just kind of made the decision that it's best to just cancel it for this year.
Has the governor been pretty good about handling the situation? Do you think he's been helpful for Santa Clarita in particular? Do you have any complaints about the way the governor's been handling it?
No, I think I've been very happy with Governor Newsom, as well as the County Board of Supervisors in their communication to the cities and locals, and so I have. I have no problem with that at this point, and let's just hope that people follow their directions, so we're able to get out of this as quickly as possible.
Do you think? I hate to put you on the spot, Cameron, but Mr. Mayor, but what do you think about Trump's handling of the situation?
Look, I think the president's doing a good job. There's especially again, you look at the president and Governor Newsom, and in years past, there's been a lot of friction, but the two of them have done what I believe you are elected to do, and they have put that aside and are trying to work together for the good of the mutual benefit of the state of California and the country. And you can always second guess what people are doing and decisions people make. I'm second guessed as well, so I get it. But I think on balance, everybody is doing, is doing a very good job in terms of putting any personal concerns aside and personal animosity aside to do the best they can for the country.
I want to talk a little bit about, I believe it was last Thursday, the meeting you guys had about the CVRA and going to districts. So that
sure.
You guys are definitely going to make that happen. It looks like it's going to happen to become, the city is going to go to districts.
Yes, the cities will be going to council districts. I think the question is whether it is in 2020 or 2022. Our intent and the intent of the plaintiffs that sent the letter was to move to districts for 2020, and so we are certainly moving forward with that in mind. However, if the public meeting restrictions remain in place, it becomes more difficult to meet all of the statewide thresholds and guidelines that are in place for cities to go to districts in terms of the number of public meetings and input that's required.
That was what I was going to ask you about. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you out there. There was some scrutiny on Facebook about the fact that this is such a big deal to go to districts. It's a major change for the city, and the fact that the council had decided to have this meeting on a Thursday night in the middle of a quarantine situation. The cynics were like, why they're doing a meeting like this at a time when no one can really come to voice their opinion about it. Do you want to respond to that? Sure.
Anyone that has concerns about it needs to talk with the Bay Area attorney and his mystery clients that filed, that threatened the city with litigation if we didn't go to districts. And so the way the law is written is once a city receives a letter about going to districts, you're given 45 days where you cannot be sued, and you can make the decision whether or not you want to go to districts during that 45-day kind of safe harbor period.
Okay.
And we had already had made plans to go to districts and to hold the public meeting necessary to declare that we were going to districts. But this all of a sudden that got thrown out of timing because of the quarantine and now the restrictions on public meetings. So we had to hold this emergency meeting last Thursday to remain to make that declaration within that safe harbor period to avoid litigation. Because if we hadn't, then this Bay Area attorney who is suing cities up and down the state would have had the opportunity then to sue the city, and that's when you get into a real danger zone when it comes to public finances. And also we had to, the meeting time was already kind of on the books, to do it prior to the 45-day deadline. It just so happened that the quarantine hit and we still had to have this meeting but we had to do it under the new restrictions.
One of the things I'm curious about, though, is, you weren't on the council when Kevin Shankman and his clients sued, or I don't know if they actually filed a suit with the city or threatened, but regarding districts, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago. What changed for the council? Was it your influence that said, look, we have to go to districts? Or did everybody else just kind of go, well,
No. So, obviously, as you said, I wasn't there in 2015 when the first, lawsuit or complaint came through. But, since then, in the last 4 years, it's very clear that the directive in California and has been by both the legislature and supported by the courts is for all jurisdictions to move to a district format. Mm-hmm. And Santa Clarita, being the largest city in the state that doesn't have districts, being that every city that has challenged going to districts has lost in the courts now. Mm-hmm. It just it makes sense that it's this whether you like it or not. This is the direction of local government now in California. So the letter was received. It just made sense given the data that the time had come for us to make the decision to move to districts.
Well, what are your feelings on it? Is it something you feel forced into, or is it something is an idea that you support?
Well, I'm all in. I think, I'm of the position, and I've always maintained this philosophy, even when I was in the legislature, that, I fight my battle when I need to, but if I'm going to lose, then you go all in to make the best of it, and to try to make it then workable. So, while I've served in both in a district capacity as well as at large, and you can see the benefits of both. It's really it's irrelevant now. The decision is we need to go to districts, and so that's where we're headed. So let's make sure that we are doing it in the best possible way that meets all of any of the CVRA guidelines, and that we're in compliance with CVRA, and we're able to move forward and still continue to represent people, Santa Clarita, the best we can. And again, I think for me, whether I'm representing one district or at large, I'm going to continue to serve the entire city, the best I can, and not really bother with the district fights that that maybe you see in other cities. But that's where we're headed. That's the direction of the state. So let's embrace it and try to make it as best as we can for the city.
Are you going to run again?
So as I said before, but when I ran the first time, I think my intent is to was to run at least for one reelection. I don't see that changing. I'm not making any big announcements, obviously, right now. Just want to kind of get through managing this this unprecedented, unexpected crisis. But once we get through that, I'll probably sit down and make a more formal decision. But again, my intent was when I ran in 2016 was to at least seek one reelection.
Okay. And then you gave the update on Friday that was on the website, the Santa Clarita website, the City of Santa Clarita website. How often are those going to happen? Are these going to be very regular now, or how? I mean, can we, as far as expectations go for that? Sure.
So I don't have a regular schedule because it's not like the city of Los Angeles or the county of Los Angeles where you have a number of updates that you can give daily. So I've been doing kind of as twice a week has usually been seems to be my rhythm. Doing one on Monday, doing one on Friday, as new directives come down. But again, that can change if we get some new direction from the county or the state, and we need to I need to jump in and make sure the community has an update. So I try to do biweekly the best we can, but sometimes that may not always be the case.
Okay. Okay, well, you know what? I want to thank you for taking the time. I usually we would dive into some silly stuff. I will tell you that since the first time we've done our podcast together was almost 4 years ago, I think.
Right, yeah, before I was on the council, so we're probably right around 4 years.
Yeah. You've since embedded in me a relationship with Cameron Smyth and Depeche Mode. It will never go away now. So
no, well, it's important to know, and this was very important to me that. Right before all of the quarantine announcements and COVID really hit, I had just purchased my tickets for the New Order Pet Shop Boys show at the Hollywood Bowl. So I am certainly hoping that this is not pushing those dates out further. But they had to add a second night, Stephen. So I was able to get in on night 2.
Do you like any bands that have guitars at all?
New Order is completely driven by bass and guitar.
Well, that's true. I'll give you that.
If you read the biography of New Order, you can see there's a lot of tension about the direction of the band after they moved over from Joy Division. So,
sure.
there's a lot of tension on whether they were going to go the more electronic or still maintain that.
Hey, New Order's a great band. I'm not knocking it. There seems to be a
believe me,
pattern with the stuff you like. So.
I wear my Gen X synth pop history proudly. No shame. And
yes.
Depeche Mode was just named, just inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
There you go. So it's timely. The last thing I wanted to ask you is, do you have any access to a picture of Christy Smyth in a mohawk? Apparently, she had one when I believe her freshman or sophomore year in high school. She swears there's no pictures. I want a picture of Christy Smyth
in a mullet or a mohawk.
Mohawk. She claims she had a mohawk in high school.
Well, I would have to go through. So it's funny because Christy is in between my brother and I.
Mm-hmm.
So my brother's senior and junior year then would have been her sophomore and freshman years. Yeah. So if it was during that time, it would only appear in my brother's yearbooks, not mine, because Christy's, I think, 2 grades. I say grades like I'm still in high school. She's 2 classes above me. So I was there during her junior and senior year.
Okay. Well, there's a quest for you.
All right.
What the hell is she going to do right now? So,
But see, Steve, that's a very dangerous game, right? Because then if I start looking through, there are a number of pictures in my Heart High yearbooks over the years that I probably would prefer to remain in those locations.
Did you have a mullet, Cameron? Did you have?
Never had the mullet. Never had the mohawk.
But there's still some pictures out there.
Still, who really wants pictures from when they were 14 years old?
I'll call Mike Devlin. I'm sure he can find them.
Exactly. They're in. He's your guy for Christy. Then let's leave that with him. He seems to have the talent.
Well, listen. I would put you on the spot and ask you to rap, but I won't, for considering the seriousness of what's going on with the crisis and stuff. I would like to invite you back again as we get closer to the election, assuming that you do decide to run again. I hope you'll join me and we'll have.
I think that'd be great. And I think as we get through the later half of the year, we'll have some clarity about districts and if we have them, then what do they look like, and what the district boundaries are, or whether or not we're going to have to wait until 2022. And there'll be plenty to talk about later in the year for sure.
Yeah. Well, let's pencil it in to do one in the future here in the near future. And, Cameron, I really want to thank you for doing the show and for always making yourself available to the show itself and being just open to the public. I think one thing I really commend you for is the fact that you are very accessible. And I want to thank you for
Thank you. And I appreciate that. And I actually enjoy my favorite part of the Facebook Live updates we do are the questions. So I also do appreciate the city staff who kind of vets them, because then when I go through and look some of the comments, I realize the number of questions that are not asked, which are actually pretty entertaining at times.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy that, and I think that is that is part of the job, and particularly at times like this, people need information specific to our community. What you're hearing from the governor or the president or the governor Cuomo daily updates, they're great and they provide some good information on the macro level. But I think it's important for people to hear what that all means to us in Santa Clarita, and we'll continue to do that.
It was one of the reasons I came out of hiatus, just to do one with you and Christy and hopefully with Mike Garcia, just to get some information out to the public. That seems necessary right now.
No, you're absolutely right, and I think the more avenues that we can provide information, the better. And and I appreciate you, trying to do that and getting these turned around quickly so that what people are hearing is timely, because that's the biggest challenge right now is how quickly the information is changing. The very first Facebook Live update I gave was on the Monday morning, and I had to come back by that afternoon because things had changed so dramatically just in that 4 or 5 hour span. And so, the more accurate, timely information people are getting, I think the better it is. And I appreciate you coming out of hiatus. Like Jordan wearing the 4-5. So
that's a basketball reference. I don't know. Well, listen, stay online for just a second here. I'm going to wrap things up. I do want to talk to you for just a second longer. But thank you so much for doing this. We'll try and put it up as quickly as possible. And we hope you guys enjoyed the talk.
You've been listening to the Talk of Santa Clarita. Listen to us on iTunes, SoundCloud.com, YouTube, and Stitcher. Barring a life event getting in the way, a new podcast is available every Tuesday. Questions, comments, and show ideas can be sent to thetalkofsantaclarita@gmail.com. You can also call or text us at 661-505-8672. That's 661-505-8672. Follow us on Twitter at The Talk of SC or on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at The Talk of Santa Clarita. You can also visit our website by going to www.thetalkofsantaclarita.com. This has been a production of Radio Free Santa Clarita Incorporated, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. To donate, go to radiofreesantaclarita.org/donate. Radio Free Santa Clarita, on the net and on the air, and we're very much aware.
Any questions?